So you guys all know the feeling, right? What feeling are you talking about, Sean? Right? It's October 1st for me. Well, what's so special about October 1st? Well, that's the start of my birthday month. My birthday's only a couple days away, October 9th. It's right around the corner. I'm so excited. Am I going to get the gifts that I want? Am I going to have this awesome party? Are all these exciting things going to happen, right? I'm eagerly anticipating my birthday. Who knows that feeling? Like your birthday's right around the corner. There's that gift you've wanted forever, right? Like it's there. It's there for the taking. You know that's what your parents are going to get you, or maybe it's not that. It's summertime right now, right? A lot of families go on summer vacations, and you start counting down the days till Disney World. You start counting down the days till Europe, till Universal, till maybe you're leaving the country and going to New Mexico. I don't know. That's not leaving the country, right? And there's that excitement, though. My vacation's just around the corner. Maybe it's not your birthday. Maybe it's not vacation. For me, I remember it was the most exciting moment in my life, yet also the most nerve-wracking moment of my life, my wedding day, right? I woke up that morning knowing that, man, this is my last few hours as a single man. This is my last few hours. And I was so ready. I was counting down the days like, I'm going to get married. I'm going to get married. We took like a 30-day picture, like 30 days till we're married. Woo, Mr. and Mrs. Fryer. It's going to be deep. Deep Fryer? All right, no, okay, all right. You can use the word French there too if you want. French, deep, I don't know, what other, anyway. But also there was this nervousness. I couldn't eat that morning. Like I started to get like almost like sick to my stomach, not out of dread, not out of worry, but I'm just like, I'm kidding. This is crazy. Like I'm about to get married. Like this is happening, and I just like, the whole morning is a blur, but there's like two things I remember. I was really excited, and I was really nervous, and I couldn't eat. It was like this crazy, exciting anticipation, but I was so worked up too. Maybe it's not that, but it's the most wonderful time with kids jingle belling and everyone telling you be of good. Yeah, I don't like your voices either. Jeez. All right. So Christmas is right around the corner, right? And that guy, that creepy dude with the white beard and the red coat's coming to visit. You better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. Some creepy old guy's going to sneak into your house and give you a gift tonight, right? I remember, listen. I remember that feeling when I was younger, going to bed on Christmas Eve knowing that the best gift was about to come. That the greatest gift I was going to get that Christmas was going to come, whether it was my Nintendo 64 one year, whether it was a new bike one year. Like, it was always the best gift from Santa. And I would go to bed with this anticipation. I would go to bed with this excitement. I would go to bed like, I can't wait till the morning because I'm going to get the gift I've always wanted. Maybe you're one of those really smart kids that you actually get excited about bringing your report card home. Right? Anyone here like that? Like, I can't wait to show my parents my straight A's. Some of you are like, I can't wait to show them my straight D's. That's an improvement. But some of you, it's the exact opposite. What do I mean? Well, it could be that same situation. It's report card time, and you got to bring that home to your parents, and it's that feeling of dread. It's that feeling of anxiety. It's that feeling of, that moment where you get off the school bus and walk into your house. It's going to be the last time you see daylight till next quarter when your next report card comes out because you did so poorly. Anyone ever experienced that? I'll never forget when I brought my first D home in 6th grade. It was a science class. It wasn't even that I didn't know this stuff. I just didn't care. I just didn't do my work. It was terrible. I was so scared to show that report card to my parents. And I still am missing the finger. No, I'm not missing a finger. But I was so scared. Maybe it's not your report. Maybe it's, anyone here enjoy going to the dentist? Yes. Oh, yeah. There's always weird people in the world. Guys, I have had a lot of dental problems because growing up, I used to eat a lot of lemons, and that's really, really bad for your teeth. So every time I go to the dentist, I expect bad news. Like, it's not even that I'm scared. Like, fillings are like, hey, cool, that tickles, whatever. It doesn't bother me. The cleaning, it doesn't bother me. But it's that feeling of dread where he's about to tell me, Sean, we got to do $1,000 worth of work in your mouth. And I'm just dreading. I'm like, I do not want to go to the dentist. I don't want nothing to do with it. Maybe it's not that. Maybe, though, you're going to the doctor and you need some blood work and that needle's going to get poked into your arm. And you're one of those people who just the thought of, like, you just passed out. Right? Like, there's someone in here who's like, like even the thought of a needle, the thought of blood. Maybe it's not that, though. Maybe your parents are gone and you did something in the house that they're going to catch, that they're going to see, that you broke this item or you did this, and there's that feeling of dread. I'm going to get caught. I'm going to get grounded. I'm going to be in so much trouble. We all know that feeling. I've entitled our time together Anticipation. Why? That feeling of anticipation, that feeling of either excitement or nervousness, that feeling of joy or fear. We've all experienced it in different areas of our life. And when I say the statement of what we're going to talk about tonight, hey, guys, Jesus is coming back. Jesus is coming back. Your response says a lot about where your heart is. For some of you, when I say Jesus is coming back, you're like, yes, finally, I can't wait. Some of you are like, I'm in trouble. I'm doomed. This is going to be bad. I'm not in that place. I got a lot of work to do. I'm not ready for that. Some of y'all are like, man, could he just please come back? Like, I am so ready. We're tight. Like, Jesus is my friend. Like, it's my Father. That's my Savior. That's my Messiah. Some of you are like, oh my gosh. Your anticipation of Jesus' return says a lot about where your heart is. So tonight, I'm going to share a message with you guys that I'm just going to be honest, and I want to be so clear when I say this. It's a scary message, but I don't want this to be a scare tactic. I don't want any of you to leave here tonight going, I was scared into following Jesus, because that is not my heart. I have seen so many people who grew up in the church who have been burned by that thought, whose hearts have been turned away from God because the church used scare tactics to get them to follow Jesus. And that's not my heart, but what I want you guys to know as we're reading this area of Scripture is I'm just reading things Jesus said are coming. So this is truth. So you guys, we've read through the Gospel of Mark, and there's been things that have really encouraged us. There's things that have made us feel really good about ourselves. I'm just going to be honest. This part of Scripture is scary, but it doesn't have to be for the believer. I was talking with Alex earlier, who was up here hosting, and I said the funny thing about this whole chapter is it has nothing to do with me. What do you mean? I'm like, Jesus is talking about things that are going to happen in the end times. Yet I don't believe I'll be a part of the end times because I believe I'll be caught up before that. And I'll explain that in a little bit, but it's Mark 13, it's verse 1. It says this, then as he went out of the temple, Jesus, one of his disciples said to him, Teacher, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here. Jesus answered and said to him, do you see these great buildings? Not one stone shall be left upon another that shall not be thrown down. Y'all are probably like, what are you talking about? So they're leaving the temple, and the temple is a beautiful building. I put a picture of it up here for you guys. It's like, now picture one, architecture in those days compared to today. They didn't have cranes to build this. They didn't have heavy machinery to form all the stones and put all that gold. Like, this was done by hand. They built this place that was the temple for the Jewish people to offer up offerings to God, their place of worship. This one took 80 years to build. It got finished around the year AD 63, the year 63. It's about 500 yards by 400 yards. It's very big. This picture doesn't do it justice. It's really one of the marvels of the ancient world. And Jesus says, hey, the disciples look on, they're like, wow, that's an amazing building. Look at it. I mean, that's an amazing building, isn't it? Like, that's real gold on top of it. This is a remodel. Obviously, we don't have colored pictures of the temple from back in the year 63, just in case you guys didn't know that. But this is a beautiful building. And the disciples are marveling at it, and Jesus says these words, do you see these great buildings? Listen to this, ready? Not one stone shall be left upon another that shall not be thrown down. If we can go to that second picture, this is the temple today. It's not there anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. What you have on there is you see that one gold top building. That's the Dome of the Rock. It's to the north. That's an Islamic holy site, Muslim holy site. And there's a mosque, which is a Muslim place of worship, south of that. And then there's that wall, the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall, some people call it. That's the only part of the temple that's left remaining is an exterior wall, not even of the temple itself. And that Dome of the Rock is sitting on top of where the temple actually existed. This is real. Like, if you were to go there today, this is what you'd see. This isn't like made up fantasy land stuff. Like, all right, so guys, if you walk through the wardrobe, this is what Narnia looks like. Look at the lamppost, right? It's Lantern Waste now. It's been a lot of years and it's gone. It's not what it used to be. Like, this is real. Like, what we're reading about right here existed. This is literally history. This isn't fake stuff. And Jesus tells them, this building that you see, not one stone will be left upon another. So what's interesting, this got finished being built in the year 63. In the year 70, there was this Jewish revolution against Rome. There was this fight of Jews against Rome, and they were getting overwhelmed, and all the Jews fled to the temple, which is significant. Some of them fled to the wilderness where they were safe, but most of them fled to the temple for a last stand. And this guy, Titus, who was leading the Roman army, he wanted them to overtake the temple, but to leave the temple intact. He wanted to preserve the temple. He wanted to keep the temple safe. Now, this is only like 40 or so years, not even after Jesus walked the earth, after Jesus said these words, this temple will not remain anymore. And what happened is some of the drunken soldiers of the Roman army started a fire on the temple. And that gold you see on top actually melted into the crevices of all the stone that it was built upon, all over it. So even though this guy wanted to preserve the temple, they had to take it apart, brick by brick, stone by stone, just to get all the gold out of it. So when Jesus said, not one stone shall be left upon another, that literally happened on accident. Because these drunken soldiers started it on fire, not even knowing they were fulfilling prophecy only 30, 40 years later. Isn't that crazy? And that's just history. Like, I could tell you that whole story without the Bible, because that's history. So Jesus makes this prediction, and then it starts a very interesting conversation. Verse 3, it says, now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when all these things will be fulfilled? So picture this. We can go to that next picture. They're sitting on the Mount of Olives, and this is today's view that they would have had. So picture that temple there where that Dome of the Rock building is, that beautiful temple that we saw, and they're sitting in the mountains, and they're looking on at it. And they're like, Jesus, you just said like this was going to be destroyed. And then they ask these questions like, when will this take place? When will the destruction of the temple take place? And then they say, and when will the end times prophecy be fulfilled? Now, I almost picture this like, I don't know, a very beautiful building to me is Cinderella's castle at Disney World, right? Anybody? Like, you walk down Main Street, right? When you're at Disney and you look on, you see the cast, and you're like, that is beautiful. Like, that's a Kodak moment. That's a family picture spot. So many people propose in front of there, take family pictures in front of there. That's people's Christmas cards. Like, I love Cinderella's castle. I can't imagine if I'm just walking with Walt Disney. Let's say he's still alive, and he's like, yeah, I tell you, the day's going to come where not one stone of that will lay on top of each other. I'm like, wait, you mean Cinderella's castle is going to be destroyed? So the disciples are pondering this, and they ask the question, Jesus, when's this going to be destroyed? But when are the end times? Like, you're talking about all of this happening. When is all of this prophecy going to take place? Verse 5, this is where it gets interesting. Ready? Jesus answering them began to say, take heed that no one deceives you. That's important. Why? Because the world is so out to deceive us these days. There's so much deception everywhere. I'm not going to go deep into that, but there's so much deception. Verse 6, many will come in my name saying, I am he, and will deceive many. I could go through a list of false people who have come saying, I am Jesus, I am the Messiah, who've gained up followings, all of these things. Jesus is predicting this. In the 2,000 years between now and when Jesus said these things, this has happened over and over and over again. Verse 7, but when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be troubled. For such things must happen, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. So what is Jesus saying? I want to be very clear. When Jesus is saying this stuff, he's not saying this is a sign of the end times. These are just signs that the end times are coming. When he says that word sorrows there, that literally means like birth pangs. Like when a woman is in labor about to have a baby and it hurts, what happens is they'll start getting contractions, right? They start little by little, and then they get closer together. They get more painful, closer together, more painful, until you've got this moment of really, really bad pain, right? And that's what he is describing. He says these things are going to happen. What things? He says, if we can go to that next slide with signs, he says there's going to be false Christs. There's going to be these idols people worship. There's going to be people claiming to be Jesus that aren't Jesus. He says there's going to be nations in conflict. Is that happening these days? Nations at war. It's been happening ever since Jesus left the earth, right? Natural disasters. Just recently, we went through a hurricane season where we went through the whole alphabet, right? Did you guys know that? Like, it was one of the most active hurricane seasons we've ever seen. You're hearing about earthquakes over here. You're hearing about, I just totally blanked on every natural, twisters, tornadoes. You're hearing about all these crazy things happening around the world. He says there's going to be famine. There's places where people are having a hard time getting food. And then he says in religious persecution, which we didn't read that verse. But he says this doesn't mean we're in the end times. But just like birth pangs, right, what happens? They get closer together and they get worse and worse until the baby comes, right? These things are going to happen more and more and more and get closer and closer and closer together. And then that's when the end times will take place. They're not signaling the end, but they're leading up to it. And then he says this in verse 9, but watch out for yourselves, for they'll deliver you up to councils. You will be beaten in the synagogues. You'll be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony to them. I love this, verse 10. And the gospel must first be preached to all the nations. But when they arrest you and deliver you up, do not worry beforehand or premeditate what you will speak. Whatever is given you in that hour, speak that, for it's not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. Now, brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child. And children will rise up against parents and cause them to be put to death. You will be hated by all for my name's sake, but he who endures to the end shall be saved. So then what is he talking about? He's saying this religious persecution is going to happen from the government all over the world, from authorities all over the world, but also from people, from your family, from your friends. I've got an abbreviated version of it here, but I downloaded this thing called the World Watch List. And you might not think, especially living in America, that we have religious persecution all that bad. Because we can come here whenever we want. We're not worried someone's going to come in here and mow us down for being Christians. We're not worried about having a Bible in our car when a police officer pulls us over, because it's not illegal. You can have a Bible on your phone, in your car, wherever. Like, we don't face a lot of religious persecution. But listen to this. A lot of people don't even realize this. During COVID, listen, ready? In India, more than 100,000 Christians received relief aid from this organization here, Open Doors. But of those, 80%, 80,000 people reported to them that they were dismissed from food distribution points. So you know how bad it was during COVID, and like it was hard to get groceries, it was hard to eat. Now imagine living in another country where you have less already. And these 80,000 people who were Christians were sent away by the government from getting aid. Listen to this. In North Korea, it's the #1 country for Christian persecution. Being discovered as a Christian is a death sentence in North Korea. If you aren't killed instantly, you'll be taken to a labor camp as a political criminal. These inhumane prisons have horrific conditions, and few believers make it out alive. Everyone in your family will share the same punishment. There's currently an estimated 50 to 70,000 Christians currently imprisoned in North Korea. In Afghanistan, living openly as a Christian is impossible. Essentially, converts have two options: flee the country or risk being killed. If their family discovers their conversion, the family, clan, or tribe must save its honor by disowning the believer or even killing them. That's in the world today. That's happening today. How about this one? In Pakistan, Christians are considered second-class citizens, inferior to Muslims. Often they're given jobs perceived as low, dirty, and dishonorable. Increasingly, Christian girls are at risk of abduction and are often forced to marry their attackers and forced into converting to Islam. How about this one? Ready? Nigeria. Violent attacks from Islamic extremist groups are common in Nigeria. Militants often murder Christians or destroy their property and means of livelihood. Men and boys are particularly vulnerable to being killed. The women and children are often displaced to camps and are at risk of abduction and forced marriage. More Christians are murdered for their faith in Nigeria than in any other country. So even though this isn't in our world for us today in our country, know that this is in the world. These things are happening in the world. These things are happening. And I only read stories from like 4 or 5 countries, and they have over 50 countries on this list of where Christians face persecution after persecution after persecution. Why do I say this? Because I love what verse 10 said. The gospel must first be preached to all nations. I said this is stuff we don't really have to worry about, but we have a role in it. We play a part in it. God has told us to go to all nations, to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then he says in the end times, these things are going to take place. This is going to be bad. But I love what this dude Tertullian said. He said, we multiply whenever we are mown down by you. The blood of Christians is seed. Picture it like, who likes Marvel movies? You guys know Hydra, right? Cut off one head and what? Right? 2 more grow out. It's the same with Christians. This is a very real thing around the world. And people are facing rejection after rejection after rejection. And it's crazy because in our world today, you can belong to all sorts of weird groups and like you're accepted. And I'm not saying acceptance is a bad thing, but like you can be like, yeah, you know, I've just started worshiping unicorns. Because they're so beautiful. You read about them in these fantasy fiction novels, and there's just such a beauty about these animals. And really, I believe inside all of us, there's a unicorn that's desiring our worship. And families are like, that's so beautiful. We support you. But then someone else is like, yeah, I've discovered Jesus. I have a personal relationship. You're so narrow-minded. How dare you? You're crazy. How could you believe the things that the Bible says? But you worship unicorns. I know, they're so amazing. right? It's like, I'm saying it like it's almost ridiculous, but there are so many weird beliefs and groups and things that are like acceptable in the world today, but yet you say you're a Christian and you're instantly like ostracized, you're instantly rejected, you're instantly told that you're crazy, you're narrow-minded. How can you believe these things? It sounds like a scary world, right? It gets worse. Verse 14. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. All right, what's happening? For those of you who don't know, there's a thing that's going to happen. Jesus is going to rapture the church. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a thing called the tribulation. It's going to be 7 years of hell on earth. Literally 7 years of just horrible stuff. And then there's this thing that's going to take place called the abomination of desolation. And it's going to mark the halfway point of the tribulation. You see, what's going to happen is Antichrist is going to sign a treaty with the nation of Israel, guaranteeing them peace for 7 years. But then at the halfway point, he's going to do this thing called the abomination of desolation, where he's literally going to go into the temple, much like we saw. It'll be rebuilt in some way, shape, or form. The Jewish people will have the ability to do it. And he's going to, what does abomination mean? Filthy, disgusting, horrible, nasty. He's going to go into the temple very much like there was a Syrian king named Antiochus IV who went into the temple in the year 167 BC and poured pig's blood on the altar. Or if you know anything about Jewish people, they stay away from pigs because they are unclean, because they are dirty. This guy literally abominated the temple, right? And what's going to happen is Antichrist is going to set up worship of him in the temple. But when the one guy did that, it wasn't the abomination of desolation. It was an abomination. But desolation means God's judgment. So there's this thing that's going to take place where there's going to be this filthy, disgusting thing that is done inside the temple, setting up idol worship, setting up worship to the Antichrist. Some people believe he'll come in and smear pig's blood in there and kill a pig in there. Like all these things, there's beliefs of what he'll do, but it's going to lead to God's judgment halfway through the tribulation. So the next 3.5 years are going to be this thing called the Great Tribulation. Now, when I say great, I don't mean good. I don't mean the happy tribulation. But I mean great as in more tribulation, as in worse tribulation, as in horrible tribulation. It's going to be horrible. So he says these words, let the reader understand. Let the reader, he's literally writing to us right there. Let the reader understand. And he tells the Jewish people, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. It's going to be interesting because this thing called the Great Tribulation, and we're going to talk about that in a second, it's going to happen. But God wants to protect the Jewish people in the end times. So he tells them to flee to the mountains. They're going to go to this place. It exists today. It's a real place. It's called Petra. If we can go to that next picture. This is a very real place in the Jordan. And they're going to go and live in this city. And they're going to be provided for 3.5 years, not having to worry about food and water. A lot like when Israel wandered in the wilderness and God provided them manna from heaven. Actually, the Bible tells us that Antichrist's army is going to try to attack them and the earth is going to swallow them up. This place exists. If you literally read the Bible, the book of Daniel, he mentioned it there, talks about the abomination of desolation. It talks about these things. And we're getting a warning here that these things are going to happen. Right? If I told you right now, hey, I know for a fact that a car is going to drive through your bedroom on July 10th. Tomorrow's the 11th. On July 11th at 12:49 p.m., would you be in your bedroom? Right? No. Why? Because you were warned. Now, you could ignore the warning. if I'm a trustworthy source. But one thing I know is there's nothing that this book has talked about that isn't true, that hasn't happened, that doesn't line up, that's been proven wrong. So you're warned about this, and this is what happens is we're being warned, we're being told, let the reader know these things are going to take place. Verse 15, let him who is on the housetop not go down into the house, nor enter to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. Pray that your flight might not be in winter. Verse 19, for in those days there will be tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the creation, which God created until this time, nor ever shall be. And unless the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he chose, he shortened the days. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or look, he is there, do not believe it, for false Christs and false prophets will rise and show signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. But take heed, see, I have told you all things beforehand. So now he's describing the great tribulation, the worst 3.5 years in the history of the world. He says there's never been a time this bad, and there'll never be another time this bad. Now, I want to put this into perspective for you guys. Never been a time this bad. If you guys remember, near the beginning of time, there was this thing called the flood, where all but 8 people were killed. Noah's Ark, anyone know the story? The only people who lived through that were his family. This says this is going to be worse. There was this city called Sodom and Gomorrah that was completely destroyed. This is going to be worse. There was a bomb dropped on this place called Hiroshima during World War II. Left nuclear radiation, killed tons of people. This is going to be worse. There was a thing called the Holocaust where 6 million Jews were murdered. This is going to be worse. We just lived through a thing called a pandemic, COVID, where maybe it didn't seem so bad here, but there's people who lost loved ones. There was people who died all over the world. Like so many people were sick, so many people were died. My best friend's brother died from this thing. It was scary. You didn't know what was going to happen. There was all these theories going around. Is this a weapon of war? Is this an actual virus? Did another country send this? And there was so much information and so much stuff being spread and so much fear around the world because you didn't know what was true and what wasn't true. And you didn't know if you'd be able to get food, and you ran out of toilet paper, the worst thing that could possibly happen. And like this is taking place. And man, I don't know about you guys. I don't want to live through 2020 again. And this is going to be worse. It's Revelation 16. I asked you guys to turn there. I got to get through this really quick. I didn't even realize what time it is. Revelation 16. During these 3.5 years, there's going to be these 7 bowls that come. And no, it's not of different cereals. The first bowl, it's a judgment. It's verse 2. It's called loathsome sores. Poured out his bowl upon the earth. Loathsome sore came upon the men who had the mark of the beast and those who worship. Like people are going to break out in sores, in boils, and all. The second bowl, the sea will turn to blood. All the creatures living in the sea will die. The third bowl, even the waters. Now, the sea is like the salt water. The waters are like the fresh water, like the stuff we drink. It's going to turn to blood. The fourth bowl, verse 8, men are scorched. Men were scorched with great heat. Fifth bowl, darkness and pain. His kingdom will become full of darkness. That's Babylon in the end times. And they gnawed their tongues because of the pain. Sixth bowl, the Euphrates River will dry up. The seventh bowl, the earth will be utterly shaken, and a great hail will fall from heaven upon men, each hailstone about the weight of a talent, which is about 75-pound blocks of ice falling out of the sky. That's the Great Tribulation. I'm not making this stuff up. It's in the Bible. And he says, I told you all these things. Verse 23, I told you all these things. Now, here's why I'm excited. I have a personal relationship with Jesus, and I believe I won't be here for this. Why? Because of this thing called the rapture. If we can go to those next verses, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, do we have those? There you go. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God. The dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive, if I'm alive when the end times are about to start, when Jesus comes back, his second coming, if I'm alive, shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Thus we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore, comfort one another with these words. Watch this. Watch, therefore, and pray always that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. Jesus is literally telling the believer, you can escape these things. You don't have to be a part of these things. Revelation 3:10, because you've kept my command to persevere, I will keep you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. See, those are why I believe in this thing called the pre-trib rapture, that Jesus will come and will be caught up, leaving this earth before all this horrible stuff takes place. And then verse 24, I'm going to read through these really fast. We can skip some of these slides. But in those days, after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars of heaven will fall, the powers in heavens will be shaken. They will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. He will send his angels and gather together his elect from the four winds, from the furthest part of the earth to the farthest part of heaven. Now, that's when he comes again after the great tribulation. There's verses in the Old Testament. You go to that next slide. If you guys want to take a quick picture of that right there, that literally predict what Jesus is talking about here. Well before he did it. Then it says this, verse 28. I'll skip verse 28. Let's go to verse 32. But of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, only the Father. Take heed, watch, count that with me, and pray, for you do not know when the time is. It is like a man going to a far country who left his house and gave authority to his servants to each his work and commanded the doorkeeper to watch. Watch, therefore, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, in the evening, at midnight, at the crowing of the rooster, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say to you, I say to all. Say what? Watch! Watch! Watch. He says, watch. Here's the question people have. So when's it going to happen? We don't know. But it's going to happen. Here's the other thing, though. I'm saying this as nice as possible. I don't care. Why? Because when it happens, I'm going to be with Jesus. I'm going to be caught up. I'm going to go to heaven. I don't have to worry about any of those horrible things happening. But what I do know is there are people that I know and love that do have to worry. There are people that I know and love that aren't Christians. I have family members that don't have a personal relationship with Jesus. So I read about those things and I go, they could live through that, or worse, die through that. So I read this and I don't worry about it for myself, but Jesus says this, watch, be ready, don't be caught by surprise. And he says, pray. And he leaves, this guy, this master of the house, leaves his house with his people as Jesus left the church to us with authority. And says, you have work to do. So I said it earlier, your parents are coming home, right? Now, I had two scenarios growing up. I'm weird, I like to clean. So there was time where my parents would leave and I would clean the whole house. I literally would, that's weird. I'd dust, I'd vacuum, a clean home's a happy home, right? And I'd clean the house and I could not wait for my parents to get home. My mom's gonna be so happy. My dad's going to be so happy. I just cleaned the house. I can't wait. I'm eagerly anticipating. I'm watching the driveway. Are they pulling in? Are they pulling in? Are they pulling in? Then there was times where I was maybe doing something I wasn't supposed to. Times I was looking at things on my computer maybe I shouldn't have been looking at. Times where I broke through a kitchen cabinet because me and my brother were fighting. He actually broke it. I was chasing him. And it was like, oh no, they're coming home. Oh, please don't come home yet. Let me try to fix this. Oh, don't come home till I'm done watching this. Don't come home until this person leaves. I'm not ready for them to come home. What is your response when you hear that Jesus is coming back? Because guys, I'll tell you, and I don't want it to be a scare tactic, and that's a reason I'm not going to do an altar call tonight. Because I don't want it to be a scary thing. I'm not going to go, hey, if you want to give your life to Jesus and miss all these things, here's the thing. If you want to do that, because I truly, truly believe there's someone in here who's like, I believe this stuff. Like, you just showed us history and all that stuff. Like, talk to your small group leader. And they will pray for you. They'll lead you in a simple prayer, but I don't want to do like an emotional decision. But I just want to tell you guys, make the most. Be excited. When you hear those words, Jesus is coming back. Be excited. Be ready. Be watchful. What are you going to do with your time waiting for him to return?